Welcome to Illo Talk. I am Cory Kerr, and this is episode 122. Is that right? 122? 122. That seems like a lot. That is a lot. Yeah. So today, I'm going to talk about some stuff that I feel guilty about. And I'm trying to work through why I feel guilty about it and what to do about that guilt. But I teach, right? I'm on a tenure track at a university, and we teach more than a lot of universities do, but it's still a teaching job, and so I get some weeks off, and I feel guilty about this. Like, I see people struggling, and I see people just scraping to, kind of just eke out enough vacation time to get a week or two. And I've been there. I've been there for roughly 12 years before I started teaching. I had 1 or 2 weeks paid vacation. Sometimes I'd take some time off without pay. Obviously, I'd always schedule that ahead of time or whatever. But it feels really weird. I have about 6 weeks from today until I need to go back to work. I've got about 6 weeks. And we've been doing lots of good stuff. I finished some drawings that I was working on, and you guys have seen those. We've also been doing family things. We've had a lot of guests come, in-laws come, and that's been a ton of fun. We went to Yellowstone. We've floated some rivers. We've started exercising as a family. And a lot of our exercising as a family we are doing because we have noticed that we are not setting a good example for Scarlett. So there's a lot of that, right? But in the meantime, I've been teaching now for about 3.5 years. December will be 4. Wow, that seems so weird. And because some of that time I was getting my master's, and some of that time I was writing curriculum for the courses that I was teaching, I haven't had a lot of time to where it's just nothing, right? I'm just not working because I've worked through several of the breaks, whether that be like getting my degree to allow me to apply for the tenure track, or whether that be writing the curriculum for the courses that I'm teaching and things like that. Like, a lot of the stuff I teach, one, it changes super frequently because of the industry that I'm in, and two, it was fairly cutting edge, and so I literally wrote the book on some of them, and whatnot. And so anyway, there have been times where it's been like a week or two, Christmas break or whatever, you get a week, and I kind of start driving everybody nuts. So from the time that I started in 2013, when I said, I want to learn how to draw, I started the comic. That became a huge turning point in my life, because that was the point where I felt like I had found that missing thing. For a number of reasons, a lot of stuff had brought me to that point. Really briefly, and I'm sure I've talked about this before, but my wife went through postpartum depression for a number of years after Scarlett, and that was super hard on her. And that is a legit difficult trial. And that went on for a few years. And during that time, I was just in the point where I was like, I need to do whatever I need to do to support her. And I kind of lost myself a little bit. I got to the point where I didn't know what I wanted or what I wanted to do. It was just whatever worked for the family. That was what I was doing. And I think that's good. But in excess, it's not great. And so eventually I got to the point where I wasn't, like, I was okay. At best, I was complacent, but I was never happy or uh, fulfilled, satisfied. And I've been told a number of times that I'm not the type of person that will ever be satisfied with situations, and I kind of agree with that, and I think that's okay. But there was something lacking. And so I started drawing, and I got such a huge rush of fulfillment out of it. It was a struggle, it was hard, I wasn't good at it, I was failing publicly in a lot of the things that I was doing. It was not a pleasant situation to be in, but it was a fulfilling situation to be in. I had something that I was doing for myself. And I realized that my art is a lot different than what a lot of people do. I would love to be wildly successful and well known, but that's not why I'm doing it. And I know that there are a lot of people that are like this as well. It's cool when people buy my stuff. That is awesome. It's a huge compliment to me that people take their hard-earned money and they spend it on my stuff. But that's also not why I'm doing it. I do it because I have a need. I've found a need to create. I've got to create. I have to, or I start to go a little stir crazy. And so we noticed after I started doing this that I started taking on projects, and I was getting a lot out of this project. Then I got this job teaching, and they basically said, you're awesome, but if you want to apply for a position where you get to stay here, you have to have a master's degree. And so I got a master's degree. In between marriage, family, full-time job, and writing curriculum and doing my comic, I had to put my comic on hold. And it has unfortunately been on hold ever since then. And now it's at the point where I've become significantly better at both storytelling and drawing, to the point where I don't think I'm going to finish that comic. It's not worth finishing it because of how bad it is. I would just be finishing it to finish it. And I feel guilty about not finishing it. I feel like I have not closed a loop and completed a project. I have spent some time rewriting how I would do it, but I mean, it is loaded with exposition. I mean, there are just pages and pages and pages of talking heads just explaining this world that I built and all this stuff. And I could tell that story so much better. So much better. And I may retell it, but I'm never going to finish the version that exists right now. So that version, I've abandoned it, right? And that was a hard choice. When I did my master's, it was literally, wake up, teach all day, come home, eat, put Scarlett to bed, go back to work, because we didn't have internet in our house because of where we lived. So I'd go back to the office till 1 to 2, sometimes 3 in the morning, work on my master's, go to bed, repeat. Saturday was just an all-day catch-up marathon. Sunday was a little bit of a day off in that, I had to be, because of the way that the school was structured, I had to be finished by 9. So I usually would have a couple hours Sunday evening. I did that for 14 months straight. I took 2 5-credit classes every 10 weeks for most of that, except for the last semester or 2. And at the end of that, I had my master's, and a position opened up, which I was super lucky that happened, because it doesn't happen for everybody. And I applied for it, and long story short, applying for tenured positions is a horrifically long process that takes it takes 6 to 8 months to go through the entire process. And there's several really stressful things in the middle of it. One is I interviewed for 6.5 hours to 7 hours, depending on the schedule. I have done that process 3 times. And so part of that is you have a bunch of interviews in a row. Some of them 10 minutes, some of them 30 minutes. Some of them are a lunch to kind of let you eat a little bit, but you're eating with the department that you are applying to become a member of. And so it's a question and answer session. And so they basically tell you, we're going to talk to each other for a few minutes, eat as much as you can. and then we're going to start asking you questions. And you're in a room with 12 to 20 other people, rapid fire questions or whatever, right? And then you teach. You take over someone's classroom, and you teach a lesson to students that you don't know and haven't developed a rapport with yet. And everybody's trying to pretend like it's totally normal, except they jam a bunch of professors in the back and they're streaming it live to a number of other people on campus, and it's under a microscope. Anyway, stressful process. Went through it 3 times. Definitely worth it, but it was a series of crazy hoops to jump through. Then, for some reason, I agreed to... so I was doing that while I was finishing up my master's, and basically they said, you can apply for this job because you're like significantly through the process of getting your master's. In the middle of applying for that job and finishing my master's, I had a semester or 2 left. A proposal that I had done a year prior went through the system, and I had recognized some things that I think could be improved in the area of emphasis that I taught in. A lot of people that I worked with agreed, and everyone told me there is no way that 1, a temporary employee, and 2, new stuff this quickly is gonna happen. If it gets approved, it'll be 5 or 6 years down the road or whatever. You'll be gone by then, and so it wasn't terribly encouraging. I didn't expect it to happen, but I had 2 classes approved that I suggested. So they aren't classes that existed, and then I was allowed to rewrite them. They were classes that were created from whole cloth. They were created from scratch. And they said, yeah, we recognize that these are needs that need to happen. And so they added several classes to the catalog. I didn't realize that was a huge deal, but it is a fairly big deal, especially for somebody who was in a temporary position on a 1-year contract to teach that. And to write it was crazy too. And so I wrote the text for that. The vector graphics playlist on my YouTube channel was largely one of the reasons why I don't have that monetized or any of my stuff monetized is because I don't like ads. But also because some of those videos were done on campus and I'm not allowed to monetize stuff like that, which makes sense, right? And so, but I did all that. I created about, at the time, 40 YouTube tutorial videos for one of the classes, and then I wrote a textbook for the other class, and then I designed the curriculum and the projects and everything for those 2 classes. And for some reason, someone convinced me that I should also, while I was doing that, create the online version. So I was developing the on-campus versions and the online versions of those courses while I was finishing my master's and applying for this position. Long story short, in the last 3 years, I have not had much time off because a lot of this happened during breaks and in between semesters, and I wrote one of those books over the holiday break, and here I am. I'm definitely not going to rewrite any classes. I'm definitely not going to write more textbooks, and I'm not going to produce any more content for any courses. And so I think part of the reason why I took all that on was because teaching is super hard, but it is also a really good gig. Like, it is the dream position for a lot of artists. And for me, I love it. I love being around the students. I love being on the campus that I'm on. I love teaching with the people that I teach with. And I've got a lot of time off, and they encourage me to work on personal projects. They want me to continue to stay relevant and continue to produce things. That's actually part of my contract, is that I need to spend a certain number of hours during the semester doing something relevant to the industry that I teach in. And so for me, that is personal projects that involve creativity visually. And so, but I took in all that stuff because I was used to people being annoyed at me for taking time off that I had earned. Like, I worked at places where when I took time off, people would be like, "Oh, I can't believe you're taking time off right now." And I'm like, but it's always like that. And you've known that I've planned this a year in advance. Every year I've worked here, I've taken time off at the same time. We plan around it, right? And so now that, like, I'm amongst a bunch of people who are used to everyone stops working. All the people I teach with are done. I feel like guilty. I feel guilty that I haven't gone into work for like a week. Like there's guilt. And I'm trying to figure out whether there's something valid to that I need to do or learn, or if that is just residual carryover from pushing myself really hard and getting used to and kind of becoming part of this culture of busy. I even used to say that busy is better than bored. And now I'm coming around to the point that I think being constantly busy is actually detrimental to creativity. But being unstimulated all the time is not good either. I think there's some rest that needs to happen, but also work. And there was a small period of time, about a week and a half, where it was in between semesters where I teach, and it was in between semesters where I was getting my master's. And I didn't have a personal project going because of my master's. And so I drove my family nuts because I was just used to just like push, go all the time. And so I remember just being like, so this is what we're doing? Like, we haven't done anything. I mean, Scarlett at the time was younger. I mean, she was 4 or 5. I can't remember when exactly this happened, but it was a year or two ago. And I think it was before she was in school. So I think she was 4 or 5. And I was just like, what are we going to accomplish? Is anybody going to make anything or do anything productive today? We're just going to like talk to each other and run errands. Like, is this really what's going on? And I remember my wife saying, listen, you're driving everybody nuts. You've got to calm down. You've been grumpy and you're snapping at people. And I think you're not able to handle this free time because it's been so long since you've even had a weekend, let alone an evening off or not having to go to work, that you don't know what to do. You need to figure out something because you're driving everybody crazy. And so since then, whenever I have known that something was coming, some time off was coming, I've planned stuff. I've planned things. And so I did 100 days of animation right after I finished my master's. So my master's was recent because I just barely finished 100 days of animation, I don't know, a month ago or something. And so now I've got 6 weeks off before I have to go back to work. And to stay sane and make sure that I am a nice person that isn't anxious and stressed out because I'm not producing anything, I have taken on a project. And so I've been doing pages, I've been doing illustrations, and you guys have seen some of those. Those have kind of been my cool down lap, after the 100 days of animation. I'm still planning on finishing that animation. I have found that that is a significantly larger project than I had anticipated. And so I naively thought that I would be able to finish that in 100 days. And I've also noticed that I don't tell short stories well. I keep doing what every beginner does, where it's like, I'm going to launch into some epic, massive, Lord of the Rings length thing. I mean, the comic that I started years ago, I was 60 pages into it when I had to put it on pause to get my master's, and I had maybe made it a third through the story arc. And so that was hundreds of pages of comic the first time I tried to do a comic. And had I not gotten my master's, I probably would have it done now. But I might be out of work as well. So, I got my master's. I don't regret that. It was good. And then this animation, I realized that I had planned what I thought was a short story arc, but it's not. It is an animated short. But it's a longer animated short, I would imagine. I haven't finished all the animatics yet. And so the story, again, got bigger than it should have. So what I've been doing is actually in the last 6 weeks, maybe longer, what I've been doing is I have been listening to a lot of short stories, and I have been reading a lot of short stories, and I've been listening to a lot of sci-fi radio from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so I have been listening to these short form 20 to 40 minute stories where you have a completed story in a short period of time. There's not carryover from one episode to the next. It's literally short form. I've been doing that intentionally because I need to learn how to tell a shorter story so that I can finish a project. I've gotten really good at starting things. I've gotten really good at working on them consistently and making a lot of progress on them. I haven't gotten really good at finishing yet. And part of the problem is that the things that I'm doing are too long form. I need to break it down. And so I've had this idea for a year or so. What I'm going to do is, and I don't know if I can finish this in 6 weeks, but I know I can make a significant amount of project or progress and wrap it up pretty quickly. It'll be pretty breakneck pace for me, but I've got a lot of time right now, so that'll be okay. I am going to write an illustrated children's book. And it's not going to be your typical children's book. There's actually even some argument amongst some of my friends on whether or not there's even a market for it. And it would be cool if there was. I mean, if there's a publisher out there that wants to grab it and run with it, it's gonna be good and it'll look good. I'm confident on that. But the problem is, here's the issue. I'm going to be telling a fairy tale, and I'm going to be retelling an actual fairy tale. It's an ancient Japanese fairy tale. Eventually, I would like to do a collection of these, whether that be an anthology of different artists that want to jump in with me. I have a couple now that are interested, or whether it be that, maybe I do this every year. During this break, I produce another chapter or something to go in this collection, or what, I'm not sure. But I like the idea of actual fairy tales. And Disney has, in our culture today, and even to some extent, Hans Christian Andersen and some of those guys that gathered these oral tales and collected them or translated them into English or whatever. They softened them quite a bit. And also, I feel like fairy tales in general have really gotten into this rut where there's like a dozen of them, and we can all name, if we were all say write down the fairy tales, we would all come up with a very similar list. A lot of those would be the ones that Disney has chosen, but also a lot of them have just been because of in the Western culture, we have a lot of influence with, kind of Northwestern European, English, Scottish, kind of storytelling tradition. And so I'd like to focus on the lesser known storytales or lesser known fairy tales. I don't know what it is that I'm going to call this book, but it will be revolving around the lesser known fairy tales that aren't necessarily from the traditional thing. And I would like to tell them as they were anciently. And so that means that if I were to do Cinderella, which I won't because it's really well known, that at the end, the birds that listen to Cinderella and follow her around and, she sings with them and whatever, they would attack the stepsisters and peck out their eyes. The stepsisters' toes would be cut off of their feet by their stepmother to try to fit into the glass slipper. There was a lot of stuff that became kind of sanitized for today's children in a lot of those things where people die horribly or are dismembered in horrible ways or disfigured or punished by the fairies. And fairies are not necessarily in these stories great people. They're not colorful old ladies that are a couple inches high and cutesy and whatever. They're oftentimes malicious and sometimes even evil, and they do playful things which can to humans be really quite painful or detrimental. And so that's why I think that the market is going to be interesting on this one. But that's not why I'm doing it. It would be great. I would love it. I want to be honest here. If a bunch of people are like, this is awesome and want to buy it, that would be phenomenal. But the market's super small for this. I am going to start with a Japanese fairy tale called, what is it called? Dang, I forgot the name of it in Japanese. Let me look it up real quick. The fairy tale is the tongue-cut sparrow, and the tongue-cut sparrow is I just want to pronounce it as best I can. Shitakiri Susumi, I think. Let me. I should have done this before. Yeah, Shitakiri Susumi, right? And so that means that is literally translated as the tongue-cut sparrow or the sparrow with the cut tongue or whatever. And I've plotted it out. And so here we have my plotted pages. I don't know if this is the format that most people use, but I needed to kind of like break up the different story beats. And so I did that on these pages like that. And I kind of have this format where a little thumbnail sketch in the middle and then kind of a description on either side of what's going on, just to kind of give me a little bit. Based on this, I originally had 30 pages that I needed to do. I felt like that was too much for 6 weeks. I know that some of those will be spot illustrations. No elements will be repeated, and all of this is going to be traditional ink and digital color. And I cut it down to about 23 or 24 pages by combining some things and eliminating some superfluous stuff from the story. And so my goal is to make significant progress in the next 6 weeks, and or finish at least the artwork for the story. The basic story is kind of cool, and I will tell you about it as I go. I don't believe that I will be doing a video every day, but I will be doing more videos than one a week, just because I have the time to do it, and I kind of want to track my progress through learning how to do picture books, because it's new to me. I haven't done a picture book before, and I don't read a lot of picture books. I do love the art of many of them, and I have flipped through and really enjoyed reading stories to my kid. And we both have kind of different artists that we really like. So anyway, so that's kind of my challenge for myself, to maintain a good marriage and be a good dad and pleasant person in general. I have to be producing something, and it's because I like it, and it has become part of me. And so also because fairy tales tend to be, by their nature, very short. And one of the weaknesses that I have is telling super long epic stories that I never finish. I'm finishing this one, and it'll go, fast. Hopefully within 2 months, I'll have all of the artwork and all of the dialogue and all of the writing done. And so I've plotted it, and I have a pretty good idea. I've done some character studies, which I don't have here. I've done some character turnarounds for some of the main characters, and this is a very doable project. So that's that. So that's what I'm doing there. I also want to talk about some stuff I've filmed in the last week and a half, 2 weeks maybe, week and a half, because I'm not sure where to put this or whatever, but here's some extra stuff. So we went to Yellowstone with some nieces and nephews, and that was fun. And some of those guys went camping, and we floated some rivers, and we've been swimming laps. And so here is random footage of me and my family and friends doing all of those things. I might pop in with some narration to explain some other stuff as we go. But anyway, let's jump into that action.
Yellowstone! We're like Yellowstone!
What was your favorite thing about Yellowstone?
Wildlife. Yeah, wildlife.
What animals did you see?
Elk.
There was an elk?
And the elk like we saw some pooping elk. Yeah. It was like we were on this hike, and there's like these geysers thingies, and then this elk, there were these 2 elk, male and female, and one of them was just pooping, and I'm like, look, it's pooping. Right now we're at a little root beer place. Yeah, it's really weird.
Oh, Cory, stop. I'm like so...
Don't worry, I'm cropping.
Today we're going to float the Buffalo River, and I bought these really cute buffalo earrings yesterday at the Joyce Farmers Market. And so I've been really meaning to re-pierce my ears for a long time, and I feel like today's the day. Guess what? It's not even hurting.
Yeah, you can tell from your face.
Okay,
do it. Everybody's waiting.
Go.
Here we go. Oh, no. Tell me how that was.
I did a workout, and I just did some stairs. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I will never do anything but again. Oh my gosh, that was just a workout.
Yeah, you did. You weren't planning on going, but you ended up doing one, huh? Yeah, so I did 4, Malia did 5.
And I did 1. Hi everybody, this is Mom and Dad's workout, and they are climbing up a bunch of stairs. This is the daily workout. Dad is climbing up these bleachers, and Mom's climbing up the stairs, and it's really hard.
In my defense, she's a trained opera singer, so her lungs are significantly better than mine.
And she runs Ragnar's.
Yeah, she does run relays and stuff. Also, I feel like I was sprinting and she was jogging up the things. But nonetheless, I'm way more out of shape than she is. Anyway, so we've been doing exercises for about a week every day, and woo! We're gonna get in shape one way or another. What were you saying?
I didn't have to run because I did swimming lessons.
You did swim lessons today, huh?
And we either run, swim, or bike, and I swam.
Yep, run, swim, or bike every day, 6 days a week. Anywho, so there's a bunch of randomness.
7 days a week.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I doubt many made it this far, but that is what my family and I have been doing for the last week and a half, while I've been finishing some things. And so now it's time to get to work. we will catch you guys later. I'm out.